Hello. Is it Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday. Oh, it's Thursday. Lost a day somewhere. Okay, so I want to start off today asking you a question. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to fail? Have you ever imagined the failed outcome? Hello, welcome. I know we typically want to think about, and I do, I definitely want to think about and visualize and imagine like the good outcome. But sometimes we need to also think about, well, what happens if I fail, right? So today I was going to talk to you about 3 things that will guarantee your failure. But before I get into that, I want to back up a little bit so that what I'm about to tell you makes a little more sense. So in 2019, my husband and I decided to move away from Phoenix, where he grew up, and where all of his kids live, and my daughter lives in Flagstaff, and his grandma and his cousins and all of our friends. We moved away from all that comfort and all that familiarity, and we moved to the corner of Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. So it's about 5.5 hours from Phoenix because you have to drive around the Grand Canyon. So the problem was we had already bought a property in the neighborhood that we were living, where we had built that house few years earlier. We had bought new property because we were going to build a house that was big enough for his grandma to come and live with us. She's aging, and we wanted to make sure that there was a place for her. So the funny thing is she never really wanted to move in with us, but my husband was insistent that we build this house that had a casita that was self-sustaining that she could live in. And we bought the property, we worked with the architect and had the plans, and got the permits from the county. And then next thing you know, my husband says, well, what if, that now that the kids are all grown, what if I took a job transfer and we worked on this special project going on, and I could have a new challenge, and he could kind of step away from the side business that he had run for years. He was always working. So he worked his 40-hour plus week job, worked several evenings every weekend on this job. He said, what if we kind of just got away from this, moved to this new place, took a new job, and led a simpler life, and had more free time to actually live life and have fun. And that's where he got me, because I really didn't want to move away from Phoenix. I actually love the Phoenix area. I love all of the things there are to do there. I love having the friends and the family close by. The restaurants are amazing. I loved living in the Phoenix area. So I wasn't really crazy about the idea until he said that last part. Like I couldn't imagine us. We were the 2 vacation a year people, and other than that, we worked, right? He worked every weekend, with a few exceptions, I guess. So when he said that last part, like, let's go live a simpler life. Let's go move to this place 5.5 hours away from everybody we know, move to a whole new place and make all new friends and the whole 9 yards. That was scary. But the thought of, taking our side-by-side out and going and exploring in the mountains. Utah's right there. Utah is probably one of the most underappreciated states for its beauty, in my opinion, because even when you see pictures online, you do not know how beautiful Utah is until you experience it. So I was kind of excited to do some hiking and different things in Utah. And then everybody always talks about how great Vegas is. We were like 1 hour and 15 minutes from Vegas, and to go see the shows and to do all that. I'm not much of a gambler, but I was like, okay, yeah, I could see how this could be a good life. The problem was we had already purchased that property, worked with an architect, probably, and bought the building permits. We probably were about close to $150,000 into this project at this time, and we were like, okay, what are we gonna do with it? So we sat on it for a little while, kind of thought about different scenarios of what we could do with it. And ultimately, at some point during 2019, we decided, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and build it and flip it. Well, we all know what happened in the spring of 2020. So, hi Rick. So 2020 comes, spring of 2020 comes, and now the whole country is just unrecognizable, right? Like what happened over that next year, nobody could have ever predicted. That sounds like a really bad movie idea. But we were trying to build a house, so we had one bad decision after another. I like to take accountability for things, so I'm always just going to be upfront with you. Like if I make a mistake, screw up, make a bad decision, don't do something I should do, I'm always gonna give it to you straight like that. So we made a lot of bad decisions. The first one being that our neighbors talked us into building a steel building. We couldn't find laborers that were skilled enough to do a steel building. It took twice as long. Screwing into steel studs is a whole lot more work than building a wood frame and using a nail gun. It takes twice as long. Then we ran into the problem of there was a microburst, and all the progress that we made, as expensive as that part was, a microburst came through and mangled the steel building. We finally had it framed, it mangled all of it, so we had to start over from scratch. Then we ran into labor shortages. Like we just couldn't find anybody that wanted to work. And when we did find people that wanted to work, they would come and do a very small portion of the job and then wouldn't show up again for weeks. Hi there, thanks for joining. And then we ran into supply chain issues, right? So we weren't alone in this. Like there's nothing special about us, but this is just how it happened. Couldn't get supplies. I remember when I went to order the appliance package for the kitchen, it was like, I don't know, 9 months on back order or something, which seems so ridiculous. But when I tell you that it ended up taking us 3 years to build that house, I guess that includes the time that we were deciding. But 3 whole years while we had moved to this other city, we were working on building this house. So all of that talk about like having this different, simple life and more adventure and seeing Utah and going out on our side by side and all the things that we talked about doing, hold on. None of it happened because we spent the majority of the time when he wasn't working on this special project, we spent the majority of our free time driving back to Phoenix to build that house for 3 years. And guess what happened to all of our money in 3 years? We couldn't buy a new house where we moved to because all of our money was tied up in the building project of the flip house. And so what we had decided very early on before we knew what we were about to get ourselves into is that we would just build this pole building, the steel pole building, and we would park our fifth wheel inside the pole building and we would live in the fifth wheel because we wanted to keep it out of the sun because Arizona is just freaking hot, right? So he wanted to put the fifth wheel inside the pole barn to keep it protected from the sun, to keep us cooler. That was the idea. And after about a year, thought I was going to lose my mind. So we took the side, like the little side room, if you can picture a pole barn with 2 big doors in the middle and 2 doors one on each side. We built out like a little apartment, we called it, and it had my home office and like a lounge area where we would hang out and watch TV and such. And then at the back, we had like a bathroom with a laundry. So it wasn't horrible. The worst part about it for me was, well, a couple of things. Like when you have your fifth wheel parked in a steel building, like there's no windows. So it was always dark in there. I couldn't see outside unless I was out in the apartment. So that was pretty awful. And then we all know what happened during that year of 2020. Like we were so secluded. So I'd moved to a new place. Hi there. Moved to a new place and we did meet some of our neighbors. So we knew some of our neighbors and they were very good people. But I felt so isolated. So I'd moved away from everything I knew, had moved to this town, was living inside of a metal building with no windows, didn't have a lot of friends. We weren't doing much. We were just spending a lot of time driving back and forth to Phoenix. It was not an ideal situation. So this went on until we moved down to where we live now in Southern Arizona. And so my husband said, you know, I promise you this time we're just gonna have people build this house. That we bought property down here. We're gonna have people build this house. We're not gonna spend our whole lives building a house. That was 2 years ago. A lot has happened in 2 years. So, well, first of all, the flip house drug on for so long that we missed that really crazy real estate market where we probably would have made some money. We missed that whole boat because the house build just took way too long. And we ended up losing like a ton of money, like a lot of scary money on that house. Cost us way more to build. The carrying costs on the loan were just ridiculous, and we lost a lot of money. So when we came down here, we bought a piece of property. I talk about it on my stories a lot. I show on my stories. It's beautiful. It's in the mountains. It's gorgeous. I think Arizona's beauty is unique, and I love it. This is a little bit different down here than the Phoenix area. It's a lot more green. It's a little bit not as hot. But we quickly realized that because we had lost so much money, that we were going to have to do a lot of this home build by ourselves. And so, fast forward to, or back up, I guess, to this last December, and we had been living this way for, like I said, like 2 years. I was like, gosh, what happened to that, that life that we were going to live? What happened to all that adventure we were going to have? And I don't know how you feel, but I'm 54 years old. We're talking about retiring in a few years. My husband works for a company where you can retire according to like some kind of point system or something. So he'll be young when he retires. He'll be like 56. We've been talking about this life that we want, like this 10 years after he retires of lots of traveling and adventure. And we've literally spent the last 5 years building a house, like one in Phoenix and now the one down here. And I'm just kind of over it. So in the meantime, while all this was going on, while he's busy doing his thing, like I'm pursuing my own thing, right? And so I had podcasts for 3 years. And I really wanted that podcast to be a success. I really wanted to help women. But after 3 years of doing it and it wasn't growing, it just became like a really expensive hobby. And I was getting really frustrated. I didn't know how to market it. I didn't know how to grow it. I thought if you had amazing guests, which I did, I thought if you continued to hone your interviewing skills and have interesting topics on your podcast, that your podcast would just automatically grow because people would tell their friends. And, it just doesn't happen like that. There's got to be a strategic plan for it. So podcasts are really a lot harder than people would believe to grow. And there's so many of them out there. People are fickle. They find a new one and yours has gotten pushed to the side. So towards the end of the year last year, I was like, you know what, I think I'm done with this whole podcast thing. So right about the same time, I had a friend who was in an MLM, and she was successful at her MLM, but she started posting different things on social media saying that she was pivoting and that she was building multiple streams of income and that she was doing something that was creating lead sources for her sales and, just all these things. And I was so intrigued. And when I started seeing some of the things she was posting about digital marketing and what Forbes had said that, digital marketing was set to be $1 trillion industry. I think is it by 2025? I should have probably looked at that. But within the next few years, it's set to be $1 trillion industry. I was like, okay, well, this sounds like something I need to look into. So here we are today, right? Doing digital marketing. I have a super strong why. I want to get my husband back. I want him to stop having to work every weekend. I want to be able to write some sweet checks to some subcontractors to do some of this work for us. I want to get back to this, going out on our side-by-side and going out in our motorhome and going camping for fun and not to live in. And, I got this whole vision, a very strong why about how I want this to work. But what happens to a lot of people? They don't spend enough time in their why. What do I mean by that? Like, they don't spend enough time visualizing it, imagining it, invoking their senses to understand what it would be like to actually live out what your why is all about. So what happens is the 3 things I want to talk to you about today is you start to make excuses. So I've been in several MLMs. The last one I was in, and I've never really been successful at them. I'll just be honest with you. Back when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter in 2000, I was in Pampered Chef. That was probably the best I ever did at one. And it probably had a lot to do with, just the time that we were living in. Like, people had the home parties and it was a lot different. But the last one I was in, and I asked myself, why do I want to do this again? I failed at so many of them. I was just really hungry for community because I had lived in a building for 3 years in a pandemic, in a retirement community. And I was ready for some community. I moved to this area down here in southern Arizona, didn't know anybody, didn't know a single soul, didn't really, and I wasn't working outside the home. I was doing my podcast and doing coaching, so I didn't really have an avenue to meet people. It's not easy to meet people when you're this age and your kids are all grown and, just all the things, right? So excuses why I couldn't get out and meet people. So I decided to, join this MLM just for the community aspect of it, just to be around other women my age that had some of the same mindset and beliefs and, some of the same goals. And when I didn't get the community, I blamed the community for my failure at that MLM. So that's my second one, blame. Excuses, I failed because I didn't have the community support. And I could have said that about any other MLM that I have ever been in. I never really felt like I had the support. I don't know what it feels like to have support in an MLM. So there may be some out there where you actually get it, but I just really didn't feel like that. And the excuses. Excuses are big, right? And you know what they say about excuses? They're like stinky feet. Everybody has them and they usually smell. So they're usually stinky excuses. And then the third one is something that most everybody is just gonna maybe like groan a little bit because you've heard this so much, but it's your comfort zone. And you know what? We are hardwired. Like our brain almost just like wants to help us out with that. Like, oh, you don't wanna do that. Don't you just wanna stay in the status quo? Don't you? But here's the thing, like if we don't spend some time, and I don't want you to live there, if we don't spend some time saying to ourselves, well, what happens if this doesn't work out? How much longer can this house build of ours drag out? How much more money can it cost us to the point where, we don't even, maybe my husband doesn't retire at that age. Maybe he continues to work. I don't know. I probably need to spend a little bit more time trying to figure out exactly how that looks, but I don't plan to fail. But I think we should spend some time asking ourselves, if nothing changes, if we don't do anything different, if we continue to do what we're doing today, if nothing changes, what does that look like? What does that look like 6 months from now? Because our HOA has already given us one extension. We're supposed to have that house done by October, and we're about to leave for 5 weeks because my husband has training outside of Vegas. So what happens if we don't have that house done by October and they don't want to give us another extension? I don't know. What happens in 6 months if you don't make any changes? What does your life look like? And are you okay with what that looks like? I think that's the thing we all have to ask ourselves a year from now. What's it going to look like when he goes to make the decision to retire if we've had to pull out a chunk of his retirement to finish building our house? So I have a very strong why. I've spent a lot of time like visualizing the end and what it looks like, and I've spent time visualizing the things that we want to do and the way that we want to spend our retirement. But we got to be careful about the excuses, the need to blame others, and the desire to stay in our comfort zone. So if any of what I've said today resonated with you and you're like, yeah, I probably need to do something a little bit different. If being able to make passive daily pay is something that you're interested in and that's why you're following my account, I'd be happy to send you our free blueprint. All you got to do is drop down to the comments and type blueprint. I'd be happy to send that to you. Feel free to DM me as well. I'd be happy to send it over to you. If nothing changes, then everything stays the same, right? That's really all I have today. I say that's all. It's been 18 minutes that I've been talking at y'all. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I will continue to share my story. I'm glad that you decided to hang out with me for a little bit today, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow and hang out some more. If you have any topics that you want me to talk about or any questions I can answer for you, I'd be happy to do both of those things. In the meantime, my link is always in my profile. You're welcome to go there anytime and click on that, and you can get the free daily blueprint there as well. All right, that's all I have for you today. Remember, go over and support my YouTube channel at Terry Kellums, and I'll see you all tomorrow at 2.